Welcome back, or welcome if you're just joining us. This is the France 24 debate on the third anniversary of the Fukushima nuclear disaster, the worst since Chernobyl in 1986. We've been talking about nuclear power. At what cost do you stop it? With us to talk about it, he's Franco-German. He's a socialist member of parliament, Mathias FEKL. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
Also want to thank scientist Harry BERNAS, who I dare not call a nuclear... how would you say it? You're not a nuclear physicist. What are you? A
material scientist.
Material scientist, okay. Jean-Louis SCHILANSKY, chair of the French Union of Petroleum Industries. From Brussels, Jean van der Poot of Greenpeace, and France 24's Yuka Royer, Japan's main regional rival, by the way, this Tuesday, expressing its concerns over nuclear safety. And also, and this brings us back to the point Harry made in part one of our discussion, to Tokyo's vast plutonium stockpiles.
这3年来在灾区重建这方面呢
Some progress has been made in rebuilding the disaster area in the past 3 years.
日本方面呢
There are still some nuclear issues that Japan needs to explain to the global community, especially to neighboring countries, which are very concerned with it.
那么国际社会特别是周边的邻国
So we hope Japan takes these concerns seriously and accounts to the global community and takes practical, responsible measures to solve it.
能够向国际社会说清楚，能够尽快的以负责任的态度采取切实的措施予以解决。
Harry BERNAS, of course, the Chinese are also building nuclear reactors, but the fact that there is this brewing standoff in the East China Sea between China and Japan, and statements like the one you just heard, how volatile does that make nuclear energy?
Very. I'm convinced that we're still here by chance. There have been so many occasions for including accidents, nuclear accidents, in the last 60 or 70 years that I really think we're still here by chance. And this is another potential occasion. The amount of plutonium that's stored at Rokasho, which is the plant where there's recycling of plutonium, is enough to make about 10,000 nuclear bombs. They don't make bombs. They don't have a military plan to make bombs, but the potential is there. They're very advanced technologically, of course. They're very competent. And, of course, the Chinese are quite well aware of that, and they also are very competent, and they're fighting over a bunch of islands in the middle of the Chinese Sea, and it's all dangerous. The world is a dangerous place. We don't realize it, but the world is a very dangerous place, and we're sitting on a volcano. And the volcano can start at one point, it can start at another point, and one of the points is somewhere between Japan and China. That's one thing. Another thing, which has nothing to do with it, but I think it would be a pity not to talk about it, is the fact that if there's any place where you shouldn't build nuclear reactors, it's in Japan, because there are geological faults all over the place. And the biggest plant in the world is just across the Honshu Island on the other side of Fukushima. It has 7 nuclear reactors, and there are 4 geological faults running right under the reactor. If an accident takes place there, the first place that's going to be hit, besides Japan, is China.
Yuka Royer, of course, nuclear power plants are not built overnight. These are decisions that are taken over decades. Why does Japan have so many nuclear power plants if it's on these seismic fault lines?
It's simply because it is a small country, it is an island, and it doesn't have a lot of natural resources. So when the government first introduced plans to build nuclear plants, they advertised, they told the public that it was the answer to Japan's lack of natural resources. And it was the only way for Japan to be self-sufficient in terms of electricity.
Do you agree, Mathias FEKL, that we may still be here simply by chance, what Harry just said?
I'm not a specialist, but obviously there are lots of dangers linked to nuclear energy. In France, there have been lots of efforts to try to enhance security. There have been lots of measures taken on that aspect, and Anne Lauvergeon, for example, did an important job on that part. It's also being exported in other countries, so it's something specific. But of course, when you see accidents like this one, or like Chernobyl, like other ones, it's amazing. And what changed with Fukushima is that it happened in a country which had the reputation of being safe concerning nuclear energy. When you see Chernobyl, everybody could say, well, it was an old reactor and so on. In Japan, it was supposed to be very safe. So there has to be enhanced security on nuclear reactors. And as I said, there has to be a European effort to start now on research, on investment, to try to change our energy mix. And when President François Hollande decided to reduce the part of nuclear energy, which is 75% today in our energy mix, which will be 50% in 2025, it's a very important step. But we have to stick to it, and we have to work also with Germany, for example. The two energy policies of the two countries are not the same. They are not coordinated enough, I think, and sometimes they are even completely opposite. And Germany also shows the difficulty because they decided to stop nuclear energy, but when you see what they decided to take as other energies, it's coal, it's energy coming from Russia. I'm not sure if it's the safest energy and the cleanest energy. So it also shows that it's difficult to change the energy mix. And one last point, we have to enhance the efforts on reducing energy consumption. This is also a very important aspect. First steps have been taken these last weeks with our bill about housing and how to renovate the French houses and to reduce energy consumption. And lots can be done on that aspect.
All right, lots of arguing going on regarding that bold move, I guess some were calling it, on the part of Germany. There were fears that Germany's post-Fukushima decision to pull the plug on nuclear power may spark a massive coal revival. Now, that's failed to materialize, according to these numbers. Coal's portion reduced there, you see, from 50 to 45%. Renewables increasing spectacularly over a decade, from 7.5% to 23%. But, and I guess I'll put it to you, Jean van der Put, will solar energy's future look as bright if subsidies, like they exist in many German regions, to renewable energy lapse?
We have to make a clear distinction in Germany between the last 5 years, where we have seen a large increase of solar photovoltaics in Germany at a relatively high cost. But today, the cost of PV panels has been reduced so dramatically that the retail price of electricity is identical to the cost of producing it, what we call grid parity. So in the German situation, you could go without subsidies today for solar photovoltaic panels. And a similar situation is applying on wind energy. The fundamental crisis in Germany we have is that the big utilities, which were also holding the nuclear power plants, have made a major miscalculation. They have still started years ago the build-up of new lignite and coal plants, and they didn't saw the strong growth of renewables coming. The consequence today is that Germany has a high overcapacity of electricity production and is exporting at record levels to not only Belgium, the Netherlands, but also to France, especially in the wintertime. And electricity prices, contrary to what is often said about this, in Germany are amongst the lowest in Europe for the large consumers. And it's actually the small consumers who are still paying for the renewables subsidies, but the large consumers are profiting from this large oversupply of electricity in Germany with very low prices. So the development of coal is not linked to the nuclear phase out, it's linked to a very sad miscalculation by the big utilities leading to a big oversupply. So the best solution today would be to shut down those lignite plants. We don't need them.
Jean-Louis Shchilansky, do you agree with the point made that we're getting to the point now where it's becoming a myth that renewables are not cost-effective?
No, they are not cost-effective.
You still think they're not?
Well, they are not. They are being subsidized. They are being subsidized in this country by billions of euros. So it's just a myth that it's cost competitive.
But the price of solar panels, for instance, has come way down.
But solar panel is one element. The issue is not the cost of solar panel. The issue is that these energies are intermittent. They are not continued. So therefore, you have to adjust production when they come in and when the demand is not there. I would just say one thing to Harry. I agree. The world is a dangerous place. That's true, but it's not really new. The point is that the world is a competitive place. And it's increasingly competitive. And the energy structure, the energy cost is a key element of this competitiveness fight, so to speak, between nations. And therefore it has to be taken, of course, in the light of danger, but also in the light of competitiveness.
So in that regard, what does it say for the future of nuclear power?
Well, it says probably that there would, it's a difficult question, there would be a cap, but because of the risks associated with nuclear power, but then we would have to find alternative energies. And renewables at that stage, as long as you cannot store electricity, is only a very, very partial answer to that question.
Mathias FEKL, we heard the European Commission a few months back announce suddenly that the targets for renewable energies would have to be revised downwards, that it was just making European industry less competitive because the price of manufacturing stuff was just too high if we made the switch too quickly. Was that the right decision taken by Brussels?
That's why you need long-term policies. In France, for example, we tried to develop solar energy, and there has been ups and downs about prices, and so all the enterprises who tried to have objectives could not realize them because there have been too many changes. When you see how nuclear energy developed, there have been massive public investments over years and years and years, and it has been a success in a way because it has developed, and we have to do exactly the same effort on a European level for other energies. I don't say that you can change from today until tomorrow. Of course not. This is not realistic, but it would be an important European movement and move to have public research on different aspects, to have a massive public investment. It would also be an important way to bring growth back to Europe and to turn to the future.
According to the International Atomic Energy Agency, the number of nuclear power plants under construction is at its highest in a quarter century. Most of those in China, which is also banking heavily on renewables. Harry BERNAS, it seems as though governments the world over are saying nuclear power is still part of the mix.
Wait a minute. For one, the amount of money that's being put into new renewables is higher than for nuclear plants. That's one thing. It's about, I think it's something like double the rate of increase and the absolute value. For example, China has 65 billion euros a year for renewables, which is more than they have for nuclear plants. It's about twice what they have for nuclear plants. That's one thing. Another thing that I'd like to emphasize in the direction of what Mathias was saying is that we need long-term thinking. And that's my answer to Jean-Louis. We have policies, of course, economy is important. And competitive economies is something we're really worrying about, especially in France and especially today. We need a European plan, that's true, but we need to improve a number of things that can only be done by cooperation, which is, for example, the improvement of the efficiency of energy in general, and particularly renewables. Not only you can't fight intermittent sun, okay, but you can combine the different energies in such a way that you smooth out the variations in the production. It's very well known. It's been studied, and it's being implemented in the United States, where the grid is being redesigned. They had to redesign it anyway because it was rotten, but it's being redesigned in such a way that they can include the variations due to renewable energies. That's one thing. Another thing is the downright efficiency of the thing. And a photovoltaic system has an efficiency between 10 and 15%. There are systems, photovoltaic systems, that go up to efficiencies of 40%. They're made out of special materials, but they're a benchmark. So we know that we can multiply it by a factor of at least 2 and probably 3. It's possible. It needs a lot of research, it needs time, it needs energy, and it needs money.
I was going to say, there's the...
but it can be done.
There is the time it takes, and any energy policy change, from all the studies I've seen, show that shifts in energy policy take decades to implement. But that's a lot longer than political time, which is very short.
That's true and not true. I mean, if we had a Manhattan Project for renewable energies, it wouldn't take that long. It would be an organized research effort. It would be on a totally different scale from what we found from what we had in the Manhattan Project. It wouldn't be in one lab. It would be all over Europe, for example. It could be done. It could be done. It's not that hard. There are the people. There's the know-how. There's the interest. It could be done.
All right, we getting a comment from one of the viewers on Twitter, Daniel, saying, "We never should have tampered with nuclear energy. Better to live without TVs than without fish." I think Daniel's being a little bit facetious there.
About our debate.
Yeah. What we have seen and over the last 3 years, since Fukushima, is this incredible rise of fracking, of shale gas. And that brings us back to the question of short term and the long term. Jean-Louis Shchilansky, we're seeing the United States now, which is suddenly becoming an energy exporter.
Yeah, well, it's an energy revolution. It's not just a single case in the United States. The United States are much advanced than any other country in the world because they have more infrastructure. But, you know, shale gas is in Argentina, shale gas is in China, shale gas in Russia, in Australia, maybe even in France, who knows? So it's changing completely the landscape of energy. Not only the US are self-sufficient in gas, but they are now producing shale oil to the level of the higher than the French consumption. And if you look at the price of oil last year, it was extraordinarily stable, as we've never seen in decades. And therefore, the landscape of oil and gas and the energy picture at large is changing considerably.
Mathias FEKL, this Tuesday, today, Poland adopting a draft law to speed up shale gas exploration. Of course, this to reduce its dependency on Russian natural gas. It's in the context of the crisis over Ukraine. For France, which is potentially sitting on a bonanza, how hard is it to resist the temptation to make a quick move to shale gas? I know that already there are certain ministers within the government who are for it.
There's one minister, I think, who is for it especially, but the position of the government is perfectly clear. There is no drilling as long as there is no clean technology, no certainty that there is no problem. And today, this is not the case. But of course, there are geostrategic implications. It's the case in Poland. There is an important change in the US. But I'm convinced that this is only a way to retard research and turning to other energies. I'm completely convinced. I'm not a specialist about energy policy, but I'm convinced that if you have an important public and private effort to turn to solar energy, to the wind energy, lots of things can be done, which are much safer for the environment and for the human beings than these kind of energies. As long as there is no clean and safe way of drilling.
Jean van der Put, what would you tell the Poles who really, like they said it themselves in Parliament this Tuesday, they're worried about the Russians and they want to wean themselves fast off Russian gas?
Well, shale gas development in Europe will be far more expensive than in the US. So it's a bit of an illusion to think that shale gas is the way forward. It's developing and putting a lot of more research money into a new area which is polluting and which is more expensive than what we see in the US. This is the big opportunity today to jump into renewables and energy efficiency. These technologies are ready and they're safe. And they are today, they are affordable, they are economic. We should not make the mistake to compare costs of solar energy 5 years ago with the costs of today. They are a factor 3 times lower. So this is incredibly development, and we should tap into this new resource of wind energy and solar energy. In Poland, they have huge resources and unused resources. What we see in Europe, like in countries like Poland, and that is very disturbing, is that the Polish government is actually politically protecting the interests of the big utilities, of the coal industry, the lignite industry, and is slowing down this development of energy efficiency and renewables. At the European level, we're now discussing 2030 targets. What kind of energy mix do we want by 2030? This will be decided maybe by the European leaders on the 20th of March. And this is a huge opportunity for Europe to jump into the future and to support ambitious targets, binding targets for renewables and efficiency towards 2030, and not to be distracted by things like shale gas, which will be very expensive in the long term.
Very expensive, Jean-Louis Shchilansky. And do you take his point that you got big industries here who've got a lot at stake and who can lobby effectively?
Well, it's not a matter of lobbying, just a matter of a harsh reality. Today, we are importing 99% in this country of our consumption of oil and gas. So the choice is crystal clear, absolutely crystal clear. Either we produce some and we avoid importing, or we are transferring wealth to oil and gas producing country. As simple as that.
All right. One comment coming in.
Can I comment on that?
Sure. Go ahead, Harry.
I think there's another thing that's crystal clear. It won't last. It may prolong we're somewhere around the oil peak somewhere, before or after. No. Okay, that's a matter of argument. But it may increase by a few years the possibility of access to oil. It's short-term thinking. That's crystal clear. It's short-term thinking. It's a matter of competition today, but the competition in 10 years will have nothing to do with fracking, right?
If we're
That's
still
one thing.
there.
The other thing is that we're in conditions where the amount of pollution, the amount of carbon emissions, the amount of methane emissions. Methane is 25 times more deleterious than carbon, and it comes out with fracking. And we don't know how much. It's still a matter of studying. Before doing any fracking, we should have had a number of years of studies of the thing. So we're in a situation where we're balancing something that can be dangerous. That's how the world is. It's true. Okay, but it is dangerous, and we know it's dangerous, and we haven't evaluated it. That's exactly what we did with nuclear, and that's why we took the wrong path with nuclear. We could have done other nuclear reactors, which we didn't do, that were much safer. And we're doing the same thing with fracking?
All right, and
it's not a good idea.
Who disagrees with you on Twitter saying investing in nuclear energy is the cheapest, most efficient, and apparently safest way. That argument may continue, but there is one final point, and we have to talk about it before we leave, which is how do you dismantle a nuclear power plant? In France, there seems to be a bit of a problem. The president made the closure of one that's right near the German border at Fessenheim a campaign promise, but the actual date for closing it down. And this is a plant that was supposed to go offline after 30 years. It's been more than 40, and some are saying now 50 years for some of these aging plants. The ones in red you can see on the map are the ones that are older than 30 years. Mathias FEKL.
There's been an engagement about that, and so the plant has to be closed. Then you have to check the date to see how you can switch to other forms of energy and to dismantle it concretely. I'm not a specialist about that, but the political decision...
Will it be closed before the end of François Hollande's mandate in 2017?
The decision that it will be closed is taken. Then there is a question about the precise date.
All right, so it's still a little bit fuzzy. We'll unfortunately leave it there, but there's much more to talk about. I want to thank you, Mathias FEKL. I want to thank Harry BERNAS, Yuka Royer, Jean-Louis Shchilansky, and Jean van der Putte for joining us from Brussels. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.